Rob J gave me an incredibly generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon and brings you today's video. Hashaton Scarab's Fist versus Ivy, 6, and Etali. Well, we've got plenty of mana to start off with, a means of discarding stuff. Nothing to discard, but hopefully we can draw into something with Rhystic Study, so we will try this, especially getting that down on turn 2. A turn 1 Birds of Paradise for Ivy. Solemn Simulacrum is good to see early because we've only got 3 basics in the deck, so I'd rather not draw into them. I'll hold up Bloodstained Mire for now because I don't think we're going to be going Swords to Plowshares, but we'll hold it up anyway. And another Mana Dork. Elvish Mystic means a potential turn 3 or turn 2 6. Now what I should have done really is got down the Polluted Delta, because then we could go for a blue and a white mana and Swords to Plowshares onto the commander. Fortunately for us, they do not play the Ivy, but we would have needed blue and white mana to go for a turn 2 Rhystic Study and a turn 1 Swords to Plowshares. Let's see here, Undercity Sewers for a Surveil, and now have access to Swiftfoot Boots, should probably keep that on top. So obviously draw into that. Let's go Ancient Tomb and play out a turn 2 Rhystic Study. 6 is being played on turn 2, so being forced to play it into the Rhystic Study and draw us another card. The beauty of getting Rhystic Study out early, and takes us into a Windfall. Ivy, Gleeful Spell Thief, see if he wants to pay the tax. Does pay for it. And Looter Ilkor swings in at us, discards a Mana Confluence to that. Alright, there's a Scrubland for us, so are we best just letting Ivy become a bit of a threat instead of blowing it up with the sword straight away? Let's go for Solemn here. Shadow Warp by Etali will draw us a card. 6 swinging into the left, so milling 3 cards for the first time. Mills a couple of Snow Forests and an Amulet of Vigour. Devoted Druid can combo off for infinite mana in certain scenarios, paying for the Rhystic Study tax. Plays a Flooded Strand, cracked it to shock in a Breeding Pool. Following that up with Springheart and Tuco, so I assume that that is bestowing. It looks like it's bestowing Looter Ilkor. So paying for Rhystic Study triggers the Ivy Gleeful Spell Thief. Strange that our opponent played a land into that. Maybe he wanted to make sure to pay Rhystic Study, but I think he could have bestowed here and then played landfall afterwards. Anyway, Looter Ilkor hits us, as does Ivy, so that is 5 damage in total. So I think we are going to have to maybe try and go for some spot removal over there. Decides to discard Sink into Stupor, so I think it's safe to assume he's got a land in hand and probably a piece of counter magic as well. And there's a Smothering Tithe, so if anything's going to get the counter magic, it's probably that. Shadow in the Warp triggers when we go for the Smothering Tithe, so 2 damage to us. Plummeting down towards half of our life total already. Decides to allow it down. I'm just going to... we could go for Psychic Frog to start discarding stuff, but we don't have anything to discard anyway, so we might just have to play as much spot removal as we can into the Windfall. I think we'll go for Swords to Plowshares on the next turn cycle. Maybe even Void Rend as well if we get enough treasure. Seems as though there's some soul in the chat here, so I'll let you read through this because I know some of you find that amusing. Alright, there we go. A Wheel of Fortune into our Smothering Tithe, which might be a response to all the whining from the Ivy player. I only skimmed through it, but there's a Swan Song forcing Ivy to use that. And paying the Rhystic Study tax as well, takes 2 damage to the Shadow in the Warp. So let's see. I think we can wait on the Swords to Plowshares, we'll see what 6 decides to do. Draw into a Talisman, thanks to Etali. Smothering Tithe tax being paid for by the Dorks. 6 turns into the left against the 2/2 bird token. So mills this time a Song of the Dryads and a Titania, and did have a Snow-Covered Forest go back into hand there. Then untapping the Devoted Druid by putting a minus counter on it, and that gets our opponent into Song of the Dryads, so that is going to get rid of the Smothering Tithe, which means we're not going to be able to go for both Void Rend and Swords to Plowshares, unfortunately. Making our opponent choose their interaction here though in the early game. pays into the study. So maybe it's best to go Void Rend onto Song of the Dryads, and then we can try and go for Windfall with Smothering Tithe still in play. Refills our opponent's hands, but it gets us a lot of mana. So yeah, I think I will do that. Tap this down. It doesn't really matter, but might as well do it. Take 2 damage to Shadow in the Warp as well. So hopefully we get a Smothering Tithe token here, because I'll probably use Swords on the Ivy straight away. So yeah, we do get a treasure. I'm going to use Swords straight away. We're getting battered by this enchantment over here. But point that at Ivy, it will take up pretty much all their mana to recast it again. A Royal Treatment. Target creature you control gains Hexproof. Royal Roll token goes onto it, so they have protection for their commander apparently. We're making him use up his mana on his own turn though. If your opponents are going to counter or play hexproof spells, whatever it is, then you make them do it on their own turn. Which means hopefully he will struggle to hold up counter magic on us. So now there's a +1/+1 and ward 1 on Ivy and the Looter. And again, everything's swinging into us. So that is 4, 5, 6 and 7 damage. So we're not longed for this game, I don't think. Looter draws a card, so Smothering Tithe triggers and decides to discard Tetsuko. Okay, that is a Toxrill, so we've got something to discard into our commander now. The Smothering Tithe is still in the place of a land, so have to be careful not to get confused with that. We need 5 mana, 6, 7 mana in order to cheat this down. Yeah, we're down to 13 already, unfortunately, but pretty much all we can try and do here is do something with our commander. Taking 2 to the Shadow in the Warp again. Priority still being held up by Ivy. Yeah, I do think our opponent's holding up counter magic, but let's go for Psychic Frog and then Windfall. It's a shame to lose out on the Toxrill, but yeah, I think it's our only shot to get a bunch of mana here. Could go for our commander first, I suppose. That comes down. Crack Polluted Delta. We go down to 8. And let's try ourselves a Windfall. We'll all discard and draw 5. And of course I could have just gone for discarding Toxrill with the Psychic Frog and then got it into play. It's not likely our opponent could have countered a triggered ability, but I just want to make mana here and try to keep my opponents from doing anything. Alright, a plus counter and hexproof onto the Looter and therefore onto Ivy as well. Takes 2 damage to the Shadow. Deciding to do that now before he discards it. And I will draw into the Rhystic Study. Bitter Triumph is another means of discard fodder. Yeah, I suppose it would have been nice to not draw into that until we can actually use it. But we need our Smothering Tithe triggers first. So it's 5 cards we draw, which is 15 treasure mana. Put Hashaton on the stack first so that we can actually see the mana when it resolves. Alright, we've got Elesh Norn there as well. So that goes well with the Toxrill. If we can at least take out the Ivy player, I'll be happy. Alright, so with a bunch of treasure, we will allow the Hashaton to resolve, pay the 3 mana, and get a copy of Toxrill into play in the form of a 4/4 zombie. I don't want to encourage the red player to go for a Blasphemous Act if he does have one in hand, so I'm going to wait on the Elesh Norn for now. I suppose we might as well play the Bauble now, because we've already played a non-creature spell into this, so we shouldn't get shocked again. I'll just swing Solemn into the right and get the Bauble down. Toxrill triggers for the first time at the end of our turn, so a slime counter goes on a bunch of stuff. And that means that we make a bunch of slug tokens, because some dorks went down. Etali has been struggling on mana here, manages to make a 4th land by turn 5. And that is a Goreclaw, Terror of Kalsisma. So, yeah, I'm glad that we held off on the Elesh Norn, because he might not have played it into an Elesh Norn. Pays for the Rhystic Study, and the 1/1 flyer goes in down the middle, ignoring us, in order to be spiteful towards Ivy, I imagine. And 6 has been swinging into him all game, in all fairness. So when Toxrill resolves, it will be another bunch of slime counters, and the 1/1 flyer dies over here, gets us a slime token. I don't want my opponent swinging in with 6 really, and we'll be able to wipe out these creatures as well. So let's go for an activation on the Psychic Frog. Discard Elesh Norn, and that will trigger our commander, so we can pay 3 and again get a tapped zombie copy of Elesh Norn into play, so wiping out all the creatures on our opponent's side of the field, as well as putting a plus counter on the Psychic Frog and making even more slimes, which goes very nicely with Elesh Norn. The green player pays into Smothering Tithe to try and keep us at bay a little bit, and then decides to scoop, so it's a case of seeing if Ivy can wipe the board here. Cephalid Colosseum was played and cracked straight away, so draw 3, discard 3, looking for an answer. Not sure what he's going to be able to do with the 3 mana in Simic colours. Alright, so deciding to scoop, we were just going to get him next turn anyway. And Archfiend of Ifnir, and this is more potent than it is in most decks that you play it in, because we can just discard any card and get more one-sided board wipes going. Don't have much of a need for one-sided board wipes at the moment though, with Toxrill and Elesh Norn in play. So let's just go straight through for swinging in, see how much we take our opponent down by. I do appreciate him playing this out. And there we go, got him down to -9, so not too bad, but I think he was at about 38 there. Yeah, so that was about as potent as I think we all assumed that Hashaton was going to be. This is my first ever time playing the deck, and honestly thought that I would have to start another game there, but being able to keep Smothering Tithe in play into a wheel for a bunch of mana is pretty good apparently. Got some lucky draws with Toxrill and Elesh Norn, but the removal, as is so often the case on Magic Online, flies all over the place in the early game, so if you can try and hold back and let everyone use all their interaction on each other in the early game, and then swoop in with a board wipe or a combo or whatever it is, then that will often pay dividends for you. Anyway, it was a pretty quick one, but also a pretty convincing one in the end as well, so hopefully you all enjoyed it. I'll be sure to run Hashaton again if you all want to see it, so let me know in the comments section. Massive thank you to the patrons for their support of the channel as well. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.